From walls to bridges. Building a language bridge out of a language barrier. Language, and the capacity for language, truly is a miracle. Language is what defines us as people, literally. It is now believed it is the capacity of advanced language skills that decide which kinds of primates died out, which flourished, allowed us to socialize, mount concerted efforts, and let us become what we now call human beings. Knowing language is what makes us human. Language is absolutely essential. It is hard to think of anything you do that can be done without language. Even thinking itself requires language. Even if a person spent their entire life alone without needing to communicate with others, language would still allow that person how to have memories, innovate, and explore ideas. However, it is the use of language to socialize and work together toward our goals that is the true strength of the human race. Yet, this amazing capacity for language as a means of communication with fellow human beings is rendered largely useless when thwarted by not having a common code, that is to say, by not using the same set of vocabulary, symbols, and terms. The first humans who had this capacity for language spread out across the world. As they became isolated from one another, how people spoke diverged and became dialects, and then finally full-blown languages. Contrary to how one might think languages evolve, they actually become more complicated with time. Thus, evolved languages tend to separate one set of people from another and let you know whether someone is from your tribe or region, or who is privileged and who is not. Eventually, evolved languages are reined in, and as part of nation building, one dialect is designated as the chosen one, wherein an attempt is made to modify it to make it more regular, and then it is codified in dictionaries, grammar books, and learning primers, and popularized in literature and performances and regulations. But the very miracle of language, which once may have united us all, has now fractured into dialects, and then into full-blown separate languages, creating barriers to communication. Languages began to act like the Great Wall of China, separating us in ways which are at times inconvenient, not able to make conversation even, and at other times result in devastating consequences, such as wars or airline crashes. Land and sea vehicles were developed, and people able to travel faster and less expensively. They would meet more and more frequently. Travelers and traders needed to learn one another's languages or create pidgin languages simultaneously as needed in order to communicate. Thus, an attempt to surmount the language barrier was improved at best as possible. The pidgin languages sometimes would have become languages in their own right. However, these languages would not only serve to bridge communication, they would, again, cause language walls to be built up from other rising languages, as well as from the languages from which they originally derived. The building of more and more linguistic walls was taking place even as travel and migration, as well as communication and international institutions, were increasing the demand for a complete and sophisticated language to express oneself in a direct and dynamic fashion among ever wider groups and populations. Technology, starting with the telegraph and the telephone, and culminating with the internet and cell phones, has brought the language barrier to an acute crisis. The need for language to bridge the language gap has entered a critical stage. This gap has been haphazardly filled by a succession of various imperialistic and pidgin languages acting as temporary lingua francas. Each of these languages has had varying degrees of adaptation in various regions and for various periods of time. Over the millennia and centuries, various languages have waxed and waned over parts of the globe according to the economic, political, and military might associated with the powers using a language.